Good morning. This is Bambi Meadowlake for Abolition News Network, October 1st, 1775. We have presented so many stories of pain and suffering of slaves brought to America that now I'm extremely pleased to have as one of our guests a former slave who has lived in Boston and whose story has exceeded all miracles of freedom from slavery. This young lady has been the first African American poet to publish a book. It is called Poems on Various Subjects, Religious and Moral. She has been called the African Genius from Boston, and recently the mother of Black literature. Welcome to ANN, Miss Phillis Wheatley.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Thank you. Phillis, tell us how you got your name.
Well, I was named after the ship Phillis that brought me here from Gambia, West Africa in 1761. Now, my last name is of my master owner, Mr. John Whitley. Slaves always took the last name of their owners.
That will probably have some significance because you're the first poet from Africa. Now, tell us how you learned English so well in order to read and write.
Well, Miss Meadowlake, the Whitley family, they are so kind, all of them, the children and the adults. I learned to read in about 16 months. I've had no formal school education.
Well, I am very impressed. And poetry, too. Where did that come from?
Well, first I learned to read the Bible, but then after that I was inspired by the English poet Alexander Pope. And then there was John Milton, also Homer, Horace, Virgil. But it was my curiosity that led me to write.
Wow, I am amazed. Most people read about those writers in college. So when did you start to write your poems?
It was probably about the year I turned 12. I just had a poem in my head and I had to get it out. So I borrowed a quill, paper, and ink.
So I see you have your book with you. Can you give us a few samples, quotes?
Sure, I would love to. The first one, which is one of my favorites, it's called On Being Brought from Africa to America. "'Twas mercy brought me from my pagan land, taught my benighted soul to understand that there's a God, that there's a Savior too. Once I redemption neither fault now knew. Some view our sable race with scornful eye. Their color is a diabolical dye. Remember Christians, Negroes, black as Cain, may be refined and join thy angelic train." Now I do have another one, and this is for any African American that are thinking of becoming a poet. And this one's called Imagination. I'd like to read an excerpt of that.
Oh, please do.
"Imagination, who can sing thy force, or who can describe the swiftness of thy course? Soaring through the air to find the bright abode, thy emerald palace of the thundering God. On thy pinions can surpass the wind and leave the rolling universe behind." And I have, if I could, one last one, and this is just a quote for any prospective poets.
Okay.
"Enlarge the close contracted mind and fill it with thy fire."
Wow, you are full of such great ideas. How old were you when you got your book published?
I was about 19 because I was purchased by Mr. John Whitley at 7 when I was brought here to America. I'm so grateful to the Whitley family because they relieved me of my household duties and supported my education. Now, no publishing house here in Boston would, publish a poem written by a slave. So I had to get my book published in London. And my father, Mr. John Whitley, even wrote me an introduction in my book to me. And it was printed in June of 1773.
Wow, so in London, did you meet anybody of interest in London?
Yes, London is just a blur of many faces and places. The Countess Lady Huntington introduced me to Mr. Granville Sharp, who took me to the London Zoo.
Mr. Granville Sharp? the famous anti-slavery society man who successfully brought the case to court to free the slaves in England and abolish the slave trade?
Yes.
He took you to the zoo?
Yes. And he wanted to know if I thought it was true that America wanted to be separated from Britain and become independent. And I told him exactly what I thought. Americans saw themselves as slaves.
Unbelievable. You giving your opinions to Mr. Granville Sharp, who abolished the slave trade in England. And you know what? I interviewed him in June of 1772 when that happened. Is there anyone else of repute that you met?
So when I got back to America, the revolution had basically begun, and George Washington had set up camp right outside Boston, Valley Fort. I wrote a letter to him. Can I share that with you?
Oh, please.
It's called To His Excellency, General Washington. Proceed, great chief, with virtue on thy side. Thy every action let the goddess guide. A crown, a mansion, and a throne that shine with gold unfading. Washington, be thy. And he invited me to his camp, Valley Fort, and he praised me for my poetry, and I praised him for what he was doing for America.
Phyllis, you are incredible. All the people you've met and inspired with your poetry. Would you like to give us one more quote from your book to remember you by?
Oh, I would love to. Let me see, I think I have it. I have it right here. Sometimes the dreams that come true are the dreams we never knew we even had.
Yes, leave us with that thought. Please read Phillis Wheatley's poetry book, Poems on Various Subjects, Religious and Moral, published in 1773. This is Bambi Meadowlake for Abolition News Network saying good morning.